Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Art of Creation Homestead. This is the time of year where, the garden's over. You've seen the disaster that's left. It's a mess, right? It's always a mess. Let's clean up at the end of the year. And it's always a good time when you're cleaning up that mess for a little self-reflection, a little look in the mirror, some evaluation of your practices and how the year went. And did you do what you should have done? Did what you do work? Was it the best thing for you to try out? And this year, the one thing we tried that was completely different than we'd ever tried before was this ground cover. See, this stuff right here is nice, thick. It's polyurethane, I guess what it is. And we've seen plenty of people use it before. And one of the main reasons we tried it was because in mid-season, weeding the garden gets to be a little much. Like, it's not that we can't do it, but I have a full-time job. Angela's here taking care of the channel videos and editing and making any recipes. Sometimes if we're doing video recipes and the chickens and everything else, and canning the stuff. And this year it was a lot of watering because we didn't get a ton of rain. So we wanted to see if we could eliminate weeding the garden, right? If we could use this, not have to weed the garden, and everything grow just as well as it ever has. So after a season of having this ground cover down, we're just, here are the things, I guess you could say, that were pros and cons for us, what we liked, what we didn't like. And some questions that I personally have, maybe not Angela as much, but I personally have them. And it's questions we had, what we liked, what we didn't like. Now, before we get into our review, I guess, of this product, I do want to let you know that this is not a paid review. Nobody gave us this product, nobody's asked us to do this. We are not trying to get affiliated with anybody who sells this stuff. This is simply we're talking about our experiences with this product to help somebody else along the way who may be thinking about using this, okay? We paid for this product with our own money. We invested in it ourselves. We chose to do this ourselves. Nobody asked us to do this. Totally unaffiliated, once again, review, I guess, of this ground cover. So the main question is going to be well, did it keep us from weeding the garden? And the answer is yes. I mean, obviously weeds didn't grow through this. Maybe a couple spots we had some weeds, like weeds are going to come up where you have to plant the product, or you have to plant your food at, like there's holes right there the tomato plants are at. The weeds are going to come through those holes. That's inevitable. But yes, it kept us from weeding the garden. So mission accomplished on that. Another very positive, I guess I should say, benefit. Another benefit of having this down is that it did keep disease at bay on the tomato plants. Now they're dried and messed up, a disaster now, and that's just because it's late, season's done. The soil wasn't as good this year as it has been in the past, and that's completely my fault because I didn't put anything on it last fall. But but it kept disease at bay, where we've always had problems with disease, mid to late season, and therefore having a lot of issues. Now they kept disease at bay because blight is caused from the splashback off the ground. In a lot of ways, there's blight spores in the ground, and when the water hits the ground, it splashes up, hits the leaves. Well, the ground's covered, so it didn't have that issue. So it did help that as well. Another thing is that it's going to make cleanup a lot easier, because you see all these junky tomatoes on the ground. I mean, it is what it is. They're junk. They're not actually tomatoes you can use. And obviously that happens here at the end of the year when the tomato plants are just a wreck, and our gardens are a wreck, right? And tomatoes are falling off. They didn't ripen appropriately. Things just didn't work out, right? Some things just don't work out with them, and so they start falling down everywhere, and you got a mess. Well, I can just come through with a shop broom or rake or whatever and clean that down, push it all down. See, it's kind of like I did over here. I was already kind of swept a lot of that up, so it cleans off easier, and therefore, when it cleans off, you also don't have those tomato seeds getting in the ground and causing all these random volunteer tomatoes coming up the next year. And also, since there wasn't weeds coming up all over the place, they didn't drop those weed seeds in the ground. So I do believe that we will have less problems with weeds next year if we choose not to use this ground cover. Now this ground cover is, by the way, more able to use it more than once. Okay, it is multi-season use unless you just mess it up. So that's another positive thing about it, is that you can use it more than one time. And because we weren't weeding the garden, we had, Angela especially, had more time to focus on other things. Like, for instance, we also raised baby chicks this year, which we do every other year essentially. Canning again, so it freed her up, give her more time, and again more time to water, since we had to do more watering this year because we had almost no rain. Now, on the negative side, it is a little expensive. I forget what we paid for it. Probably invested a couple $100 in it, maybe, or maybe, I don't know. Now, there's a couple different kinds that you can buy. We bought this from growersolution.com. They have a couple different sizes, a couple different types that you can buy. We used the one we thought was best for us. I really don't know which one it was, I'll be honest with you, but you can look at it and kind of figure it out for yourself if that's what you're looking for. Now, you do also have to buy the pins, the little garden or ground pins or stakes, whatever I guess they are, that you have to get these nailed down in with. I used a rubber mallet. It was hard on my knees and my back. Now, I did get all the work done ahead of time, you know, so you get all the work done early. I guess it kind of replaces the work you're doing for the weeding, but it did take longer to plant the garden because of that. So it was more time on the front end, less time in the middle, I guess, but more time on the front end for sure. And so if you're trying to get your garden in a hurry, probably not going to get it in a hurry the first time with this, especially because it does take more time to get them planted. Second of all, when you are using this, you also need a flame weeder. Okay, flame weeder being it's a propane tank with a hose and a long metal wand, right, for burning weeds. It's a weed burner, flame weeder, whatever. I've got one up there on the patio. You can look up and find out what it is for yourself, but you need one of those if you're going to plant your tomato plants and stuff in them, because you got to burn that hole. You got to burn a hole back into that ground cover. So you got to have one of those as well. I already had one, so it wasn't that big of a deal. So there is some things that you got to keep in mind with that, with buying this. If you don't have any of that stuff, it's a full investment. Angela said there's a tool that you can use. I haven't seen it, but she said there's a tool that you can buy that would enable you to not have to be on your hands and knees putting those in with rubber, putting the pins in with a rubber mallet. I wasn't investing in it this year because I didn't know if we were going to like it or not. So I wasn't investing in that. So I used a rubber mallet and did it myself. It wasn't hard to do as far as like to get them back in the ground. And I'm sure there's probably some way you could rig it up that you could make something that you could hammer it in without having to get on your hands and knees. But it was hard on my knees and my back for sure to do all this. And maybe the biggest question I have, Angela's not so much with it, but it is me. But I do question how much water was able to get into the ground. This stuff does let water leak through. Okay, so that's fair. Water will seep through this especially after it wears in a little bit. Okay, it kind of stretches out and whatnot. So water can seep through. It's not a question. But we are on a slope, okay? I'm gonna get down here maybe you can see the slope a little bit. So I'm actually downhill on my garden, okay? Maybe you can tell a little bit the slope kind of slopes up. Not a steep slope, but it is a slope. We used soaker hoses on our garden before, trying to save time on watering because we had so much to water. And what I found out with the soaker hoses is a lot of that water was running downhill on the soaker hoses, wasn't dripping where it needed to drip. I wonder if it's not doing the same thing here, okay? And I think if it's flat land, I think there's no question that the water's gonna get in there where it needs to go. But because we're on a slope, because of how things are planted, I gotta wonder how much of that water was running from the tomato plants, from the pepper plants, into the aisleways, and then downhill a little bit, okay? And this here, it wasn't gonna puddle right here. It did puddle right here. Like in this section, tomatoes ended, had a section to walk through, and then the popcorn was over here. It would puddle right here for sure. it might even puddle up in here for sure, but there's a little bit of a swell right here. Plants are planted over here, plants are planted right here. There's a little bit of a swell, and I have to wonder how much water would come right here and run down, and right here and run down and get in here and not get to the plant exactly where it needed to be. It's a legitimate question, okay? Now, is it enough of a question that I wouldn't use this again? Probably not, okay? Because again, we had to do all this hand watering anyways, and so there wasn't a ton of rain to run down. So we had a water hose coming through here, putting water in right here where these where the tomato plants and pepper plants and everything were at anyways. So I don't think that was a massive issue, but it's just a question I have. It's a fair question, and you have to question this stuff. If you don't question, then you're never gonna get an answer, I guess you could say. But in the end, I feel like we paid a couple $100 or so. I honestly don't remember the full investment for somebody to weed our garden, if that makes sense. Like, it's almost like we employed somebody to weed this garden for us that we didn't have to this year. And that's not because we care to weed it, not because we're lazy. It's just time. We're trying to use our time efficiently. It takes time to film videos, it takes time to edit videos. You know, it takes time to take care of chickens and little babies. It takes time to harvest and can. It took hours to water stuff this year. It takes time to pull out and clean up, replant. It takes a lot of time. So if we can employ some ground cover to do our weeding for us, I think it was well worth it. And I believe that's where we're standing at, is that for us it was worth it. For us it was worth it. I think it's gonna work better on flatter ground. Okay, that's real. I think there's certain things maybe you could do better with it. I messed up with it a couple times, like cutting it. And so like I had to kind of do a patchwork thing. It's just learning. I'm just learning with it. But it does work. It really does work. And it was well worth our time. And so anybody who's gonna, try to plant a larger garden with maybe not enough hands to do it, I think it's worth your time in May to put this down. That way you're not spending all this time in June, July, and August in the heat trying to weed the garden and do all that other mess. You can spend that time doing something else that may be more beneficial. Like I said, it's just me and Angela. It ain't like we got a lot of people doing this, so it kind of helps to have a little helper, and that's what that was this year, was a little bit of helper, and I think it worked out just fine. So thank you guys so much for watching. We do appreciate it. My name is Jason. This is Art of Creation Homestead. We love y'all. God bless you and goodbye.